Currently it is borderline personality disorder, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and major depressive disorder. But I've been diagnosed with pretty much anything under the sun except for psychotic disorders. Um, since I've had an array of them since I started getting diagnosed at like age 12, um, it's been really hard. It's just been, having the change in diagnoses and trying to figure out like what what to really do and how to help was really tough. And currently, like I'm struggling a lot with my current diagnosis of borderline, and just having the fluctuation in emotions that's probably the hardest part. That, and then my heightened anxiety. Um, I I didn't start going into public school till fifth grade, so when I was 10. Um, but it was pretty much a couple years into being in public school, after my grandma died. Um, my Mostly my teachers started noticing some more depressiveness in me, and school counselor met with my mom, and then we started on the journey of diagnosis world and medications and all kinds of therapies and everything. Therapy, medications, it's been hard. It was really hard, especially in school, because not necessarily do you get the most certified, best counselors in school. And then my mom was a single parent, so she was working while I was in school, and so she couldn't like take a time off work to take me from school to therapy and back. And medications are just a challenge. We found over the years I have a very quick tolerance for medications. I build tolerances to them, so very frequently I've had to have changes and trying to find the right ones, and just it's been all over the map. I've had therapies. I've gone to just basic mental health agencies, up into have some private insured ones, but mostly I'm with mental health agencies. So I don't really get to be like looking at credentials and seeing like how they really do therapy models. I just kind of get placed. I've had a very wide variety. My mom was my biggest supporter. Never once, said, I'm tired of this, you need to quit it, you need to stop, like, suck it up. She never said any of that. It's kind of what I'm getting in the last few months with some of my other family members, is they claim to be supportive, and then they tell me to like, just get over it, you're okay, suck it up. I've lost friendships because of my mental health. I thought I had a really good friend for a long time, and then she sent a text to me like 2 years after we met and said, I can't handle your mental health, goodbye, and deleted me from everything. So I try to keep it quiet, because I don't know how people are going to react, and I know the stigma from mental health is starting to kind of dissipate a little, but it still is highly, and then especially with my complexity of my diagnoses, I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you're just faking it, to, oh my gosh, we need to institutionalize you, kind of a thing. So biggest thing is just being there for me. I struggle the most at night, and on weekends, because I don't have structure. I don't have places to go during the weekends other than like church. And then at night I live by myself. Well, I live in a house with other roommates, but we don't ever interact or do anything together. So I just basically live on my own, and I'm kind of like this delicate where like I'm an extroverted introvert. I like people, but I can only handle so much. And then adding in when I'm got flare-ups of my mental health, like depressive episodes or anxiety, I don't want to be around people more. Yeah, I need that support. I need the structure of people, but because I tend to do some pretty maladaptive coping skills. I've been a self-harmer for 21 years, basically since the age of 12 is when I started, and I've adopted a few other ones that are pretty self-destructive, and at night those flare up, and I don't always have people that I can call and talk to or hang out with. I just get to sit and try to handle it on my own. I'm highly empathetic. I'm one of those people that like I can read rooms, and like depending on the people in the room, then I kind of match them. So if it's more of like a low-key chill, then I'm more chill and relaxed, or if it's more high stress, then I'm anxious and want to do everything right kind of thing. And I can just sense, and I know what it's like to not be heard. I know what it's like to not be a part of people's world, so I want to do that for other people. And it's actually what is kind of driving me to eventually go back to college, because I started college when I first graduated high school, and then had some struggles and stuff, so I stopped. But I'm hoping to eventually get back into school, and I want to become a music therapist, because music is like my biggest coping skill.
Say more about
that. So my mom has always instilled music with me. I went to church every Sunday, so heard all the hymns, and sang in choirs, and my mom got me into piano lessons for a couple of years, and then middle school and high school I did choir and got into elite choirs. I did a year of voice lessons. Music and me are like synchronized as one, and I don't really like to go without music. I can't stand driving my car without music. I can't stand being places without music, and I actually taught myself how to play the guitar and continue to challenge myself in that area. And I know sometimes words can fail people, and I understand that not everybody knows the psychology lingo that I do. And sometimes the best way that they can find words is through a song. And so if they come to me and be like, listen to this song, this is how I feel, then I can be like, okay, then, from there we can explore what's really going on and kind of get to roots of issues. Not necessarily like when I was very first diagnosed did I notice a difference, but like kind of like my sophomore, especially my junior year and my senior year, I noticed that, I was different from everybody else in my class. I noticed that like, my mom and I started figuring out like, oh, I need accommodations because of my mental health and stuff for school and classes, and I have a vision disorder on top of all my mental health, so without my glasses I'm legally half blind, and that made school challenging in the first place, and then to add emotional issues on top of all that was just, I've always seen myself as different, and in one respect, like, I hate it. I have a lot of self-hatred towards it, but part of me is like, but there's nobody else like me, so I could be it. I think the biggest thing is just compassion. Sometimes it's really difficult to deal with, especially like having the diagnosis of borderline personality, is because you're on this fence of like, you're not fully just mood disorder issues, but you're not necessarily on the psychotic side, and you're just in between, and medications can only go so far, and it's a trauma-based, diagnosis, and I just, I'm chronically suicidal. At times have flare-ups and have to be hospitalized. So just patience, compassion, and a listening ear is the biggest thing I can offer anybody who is listening to this as a caregiver. So as somebody who does have this, or if they're struggling on their own, and being your own advocate, doing research, doing homework. Don't trust WebMD, but Google has a lot of resources, and there's a lot of really good apps for the phone out too for mental health. So, I think if someone's being first diagnosed with any of the diagnoses that I have, getting the right help is key. Finding a therapist that you jive with is a huge integral part. You don't want somebody that you're not going to open up to, because then what's the point in going? But there's different models that are being taught, and I've tried all kinds of modalities of therapy. I've done cognitive behavioral, I've done dialectical behavioral, and I've even gone a couple rounds of electric convulsive therapy to try to kind of help myself. And I think as science kind of develops more and more, and we figure out we narrow down the pathway, I think a lot more help for kids. I think getting away from technology is a huge thing too. We get so sucked into all the different platforms there are, and the apps and stuff, and I think I watch some of my friends who have kids that are on their gaming consoles or on their phones constantly, and they're 10 and they're just struggling with emotional issues, and I'm just it feeds, sometimes those feed the negativity, and they feed the depression and the anxiety, and I'm afraid that we're creating these generations of kids that are too afraid to go outside or too afraid to do anything because society says, oh, it's too scary, or this is going to happen, or whatever. There's scary stuff in the world, but yeah, I've had the blessing of having a few different therapists that I can say everything to. That's a huge part for me. Is I like transparency. But I don't like saying it to everybody. I'm very careful about who I share my bigger challenges with, and the current therapist I have, and the one I had a couple years ago when I was living in Denver. They knew how to pry. They knew how to get me to open up and talk, but they were compassionate and good listeners, and dialogued with me. That's my biggest thing, is if I just have this therapist that's just sitting there taking notes and not asking questions and not engaging with me, it's why am I talking to you? I can therapize myself, I guess. But if I have someone that engages and shares maybe even a little bit of their personal journey that they've gone through, it just helps a little bit more. I think one thing that I kind of touched on was my self-injury that I've engaged with, and I just kind of want to reach out to those people that are struggling with that. There's a lot of shame and guilt involved, and yeah, society does kind of shame you and want you to stop doing it and take away everything, and basically punish you for doing it. And it's just if it's your coping skill, as long as you're being safe, like, maybe that's what you do for a season. But, you know, self-harm is not an answer. It's only just a coping skill that seems to work, and it really doesn't work. You know, I've found in over the 21 years of doing it, you know, it's a very temporary fix. You only feel good for just a little bit longer, and then that guilt and shame comes in, and it's like, oh, I gotta hide it, and gotta wear long sleeves in the summer and stuff. But the stigma around self-injury, I think, is still really prevalent, and just know that, like, you know, there's lots of people that struggle with it and hide it in different ways.